welcome to another Learning Spy Academy webinar with me, David Didau, and this episode is sponsored by Crown House Publishing. And if you want to get any books from Crown House, they're offering 30% off a selected range. So if you go to their website and look through the books that are on offer, you can get 30% off if you type in NQT30 at the checkout. And in return for sponsorship, I'm just doing a little bit of a brief review of a couple of Crown House books. And today I'm going to be talking about Peter Nelmes' book, Troubled Hearts, Troubled Minds. Now, Peter is a very experienced teacher who's worked for most of his career in special education. And so this book's really written about how to deal with the most challenging types of students, the sorts of students who really struggle in mainstream school. And so he's got lots of advice, which I suppose what I would say, having read through the book, is that it's great advice for those most difficult students, but not all of it is necessarily useful or practical for dealing with the broad range of students in mainstream school. So he talks about the fact that there are three components that you need to understand, and I think this is good advice for any teacher in any circumstance, and that is the you yourself, the student, but also the context. And this is important because sometimes, especially as new teachers, we can feel that we failed, or we can get really cross because the student's terrible. And you only have to see the same student in a different classroom or a different setting to realise that they're not always the same wherever they are. And you're not always the same wherever you are either. The context is a really important part of the relationship, and one which Nelmes says is not, we don't think about enough, and we're not aware of enough, and it's not something we put enough effort into trying to control. He talks about, the concept at the heart of his book is about trying to get at shared meanings, joint understandings, where the context and the student and the teacher come together for us to understand each other in a way which is useful and conveys the kind of meanings that we want to get across to students. And that's a great deal of the focus of the book. There are some things that he says which I just think are great and simple advice, which is really true. Some observations which are really true. Things like we should always be aware that just because we've said something, just because we've taught something, doesn't mean that students will have learned it. It doesn't mean it's gone in. And that's absolutely key with teaching children how to behave. Saying behave is very not much use to someone who doesn't really know what you mean by that. So you have to be absolutely clear and explicit about what good behaviour in this context looks like. And that's good, solid advice, and something that all teachers would benefit from being more aware of. There are some things he says, like he's very much believes in the trope that all behaviour is communication, which I don't think is a particularly helpful way of viewing the way that students behave. Even to the extent that that's true, it's trivially true. That's certainly my opinion. But that's not to say that there aren't great insights in the book. And he details lots of things that we should know about the kinds of the emotional context of teaching, which maybe is quite overlooked. He looks at what it's like to be a teacher and the sorts of things that we bring to the classroom that we should be more aware of, and that's definitely a benefit. And he also talks about tuning in, being aware of our emotions, and making sure that we don't bring those in unhelpful ways into the classroom. And that's certainly true. We're the adult, we're the ones that have to be mature and sensible and all those other things. But of course, we're human. Of course, we're prone to making mistakes, and Nelmes is very much aware of that. And he weaves throughout the book anecdotes and observations from his many years of practice in dealing with troubled children. And there's some great anecdotes and stories in there which you will probably find enjoyable and will build your understanding of the points that he's making. So, Troubled Hearts, Troubled Minds by Peter Nelmes. If you fancy the book, it is available at the Crown House web store, 30% off with the code NQT30.